Hi, my name is Elizabeth Causton, and I want to welcome you to part two of a two-part presentation entitled, That's a Good Question, How to Make Difficult Conversations Easier. I thought we'd begin with a brief review, however, of part one, knowing that you can go back and catch up on that at your convenience. In part one, we affirmed that as healthcare assistants, you are uniquely situated on the healthcare team to be valuable information gatherers using your skills of relationship building, companioning, and listening to encourage family members, residents, and clients to share valuable information that helps the team provide the best care possible. So, part one was largely about making a connection between what you have to offer and what the team needs. And it was about adopting a strategy that allows you to not only improve care, but also maximize your value on the team. In part one, we also looked at how we typically define difficult conversations and found that, in fact, they tend to be normal conversations that happen routinely in your line of work. So they don't need to be dreaded or avoided once you have a strategy for dealing with them. A strategy that makes difficult, what we are now calling challenging conversations, easier to participate in, and challenging questions easier to respond to. And we called that strategy VERS, VERS, which stands for Validate, Explore, Respond, and Share. So let's look at a couple of real-life examples to see how this strategy might work for you. Imagine someone asking you, what will my dying look like? What will my loved one's dying look like? Without a strategy, it would probably be easiest to dismiss or minimize this question, saying something like, I have no idea. I guess it would be different for everyone, but I'm not even supposed to answer questions like that. However, with verse, you can respond in a way that allows the person asking the question to feel like they have been seen and heard and validated, and in a way that allows you to gather valuable background information for the team. So you would start by validating. And in this situation, that might involve affirming the right of the person to ask the question and normalizing the question itself. So you might say something like, you know, it's not uncommon for people to want to have some idea of what to expect. So this question actually gets asked quite frequently. And then you might explore by saying something like, can you just tell me, is there some particular concern you have or something you're particularly curious about that would make you ask this question right now? And then you might respond by saying, thanks for sharing that information with me. That really gives me a much better understanding of what your concerns are. I'd like to share this information with the nurse who can probably give you a better idea of what to expect. Would that be okay? And then you would share the information with the team, giving them information behind the question. Because knowing what the question is really about allows the team to offer a relevant response rather than just making assumptions about what they think the person wants to know. But before we move on to another example, I want to pause and just make a couple of key points. First of all, there is no such thing as a right answer to this question. And it certainly is not about memorizing certain words or phrases. Whatever words you use, they need to be your own. The point is the importance of following the process of starting with validating and exploring before you move on to responding and sharing. Secondly, validation doesn't always have to happen with words. Rachel Remen, the American oncologist, author, and therapist who said that healing happens when someone feels they have been seen and heard and validated, also said that a loving silence can have far more power to connect and heal than most well-intentioned words. So validation may take the form of a nonverbal demonstration of compassion and healing, such as touch, with permission, of course, or such as a few moments of silence, but with body language that says, I get how big this is, and I'm willing to be fully present with you here now. It can even be validating to say, I just don't know what to say, or I'm just so sorry you have to go through this, because both of those phrases show that you are willing to connect, that you are listening, that you are paying attention, that you are not dismissing or minimizing the question. So given those key points, let's move on to another example of a question, a difficult, challenging question that you are likely to come across in a palliative care setting. My experience is that given how difficult it is to prognosticate in the context of long-term chronic illnesses, the questions, how much longer do I have to live, or how much longer does my loved one have to live, are often avoided by physicians and nurses because they don't want to get it wrong, and by healthcare assistants because it's not in their job description to answer questions like that. However, if these questions are approached from the standpoint of verse, validate, explore, respond, and share, they can be, in fact, opportunities for you to gather crucial information that can actually result in an appropriate response being given to the person who's asking the question. So again, you would start with validating, and you might say something like, that's an important question, and I think that a nurse or physician would probably be the best person to try and answer that question for you. But can I just check out a couple of things with you first, and then we can talk about who you might want me to pass that information on to. So once you've validated, you move on to exploring, where you might say something like, first of all, it would be helpful to know what is behind this question for you at this time. Has something changed, or has something happened that we should know about? You see, exploring is about asking the question, what more do I need to understand about this person, this question, this situation, this issue, this problem? Now, having said that, I want to stop there for a moment before we move on to responding, and just consider all the various reasons that someone might ask the question. How much longer do I have to live? How much longer does my loved one have to live? So a grandmother might ask because her grandchildren live out of town and want to have one more visit with their grandfather while he can still have a conversation with them. Or someone might say, well, I've just been sitting at my husband's bedside in this facility for 3 days now, and I just need to know if I can go home and take a shower. Someone else might say, well, my dad wants to have last rites before he dies. And then again, someone else might say, well, Mom seems to have plateaued, so we've made plans for a family vacation, and we need to know, is it okay to be gone for 2 weeks? And then again, someone who's dying might say, well, I feel like I'm getting weaker, and I need to know because I want my family to be prepared. And someone else might say, I'm tired of living like this, and I want to know what my options are. So you can see that once you know what is behind the question, once you know what the question really is, you can see that, in fact, these are all very different questions that will need a different approach, and in sometimes a very different level of preparation in order to be responded to appropriately. And that's why it is so important for the person answering the question to know what the question really is, because it's very different to ask, can I take a couple of hours to go home for a shower? That's a very different question from, can we take 2 weeks to go on a family vacation, which is very different from asking, what are my options around dying in the midst of this long-term chronic illness? And what we are talking about is exactly the kind of information gathering that you as healthcare assistants are particularly skilled at doing. All of this is crucial information that literally determines what an appropriate response will look like. So, after validating and exploring, you move on to responding, which, remember, can be asking another question to further exploration. So you might say something like, so given the information that you've given me about the changes that you have seen or experienced, do you have any sense of timing yourself? This particular piece of information can be so incredibly invaluable to the nurse or the physician who will try to give a prognosis, to know whether this person is on the same page or whether they will in fact be completely shocked when they find out what the timing is actually likely to be like. So then you might further explore with the grandmother by saying, so how important is it for the grandchildren to come, and how long do you think it would take you to arrange that visit? You might say to the family, so if your father's condition declined while you were away, how would that be for you? Or to the woman who wanted her father to have last rites, you might continue to ask, well, how would it be if the priest came early as opposed to risking having them come too late? So all of these follow-up questions, which are part of your response, provide additional crucial information. And then again, you might validate by saying, this has been a very important, helpful conversation. Thank you for being willing to clarify these things for me to pass on to the team. It will really help whoever gets back to you to respond to your specific concerns. And then you share information with the team. And this is where you give the team the gift of the information that you have gathered. Information that improves care by facilitating accurate information between the team and the people that they are caring for. Remember, in our healthcare system, information is power. Information empowers the team by allowing them to act compassionately and competently with each individual in their care, because information reduces the influence of assumptions and personal biases on how care is provided. But information doesn't just empower the team. Being asked to share their wishes or opinions, their personal expertise, their hopes, their fears, and their expectations also empowers the clients, the residents, and the family members who all too often feel like what they want, what they think, and what they have experienced doesn't matter to the team. So creating an environment in which there is a mutual sharing of information leads to improved care based on collaboration and mutual respect. So in conclusion, the work that you do is deeply personal, very challenging, and incredibly important and valuable. Verse, validating, exploring, responding, and sharing, is actually just a way of seeing the work in which gathering information is seen to be at least as valuable as giving information. In fact, we might say that gathering information makes the giving of information meaningful and valid. So I hope that you will try out this strategy. I hope that you will use your own words to validate, explore, respond, and share in order to improve care, in order to boost your own self-confidence, and in order to maximize your value on the healthcare team. Thank you.